everybody, and welcome back to another Lessons from Lockdown. And I'm here with a longtime friend, the CEO of Propeller Industries, Chris Fenster. I've known Chris since the time of running one of my startups called AppSavvy. We got to work with him a little bit. He was smart enough to poach one of our brightest employees, Christina. So congrats on that. And Propeller, Chris, I'm going to have you explain Propeller quickly, but in short, you guys have been working for years now to do strategic and financial and accounting work for the venture community and startups. Is that right? And of course, please expand on that.
Yeah, that's right. And forgive me if my audio breaks up. In true Lessons from Lockdown style, we don't have a great connection here. But Propeller is a finance and accounting partner for venture stage companies. We help firms who are outgrowing bookkeeping, professionalize and scale their finance function, and eventually bring roles in-house.
Perfect. All right, Chris. Well, you obviously know the theme here. We're coming a little bit out of a quarantine period. But I want to start off with just a couple questions and sort of the height. Like you're out. I know you live in Brooklyn. You mentioned you're out in Long Island now. We're going to see kids sort of parade in the background, which is totally cool. We're all used to that. But over the last few months, just share with us both some of your lowest quarantine and kind of toughest moments, but also some of the brighter ones. And with that, there's a third question. What are you most looking forward to now that things are right or wrong or somewhat opening a little bit?
Yeah, good questions. I'll say, first of all, that the last 3 months have been the hardest of my professional career. And for context, my last 3 startups before Propeller all failed. So there were definitely some tough experiences in there. And, I think over who would have expected this, right? Global pandemic and, financial crisis and then all the, social tragedy have just created and just absolutely unprecedented scope of challenge. And I've never been in a CEO role for an experience even close to that. And so I think it's been difficult. I mean, as a firm, we had to take 200 people on 3 continents and switch to remote work. And that was hard. And then, everybody had personal concerns about health and family and safety. And we had to make sure that our team felt supported. We have 300 clients, and everybody had sort of put 2019 to bed, and we sent the financials out to the CPAs to do the tax returns, and we delivered board reporting and budgets, and we had to redo all of that, and that was challenging. But I think the 2 hardest things that I've had to do over the last couple of months were we laid off about 10% of our team. And, we've been growing at, 50% per year for 10 years. And that was really hard. We didn't have a bunch of sort of dead weight in the company. We'd been scrambling to hire people. We made 4 job offers in the week before COVID. So that was really tough. It's just figuring out how to communicate that, and I don't want people to freak out, but I also want to be honest. And so that was super hard. And then the conversations that we've had, I think, since George Floyd was killed, and thinking about how to talk about race, even with my kids who are we have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. That was really tough. And then I think the realization that it's for me to have a hard conversation with my 9-year-old about is a white boy, right, about race, really helped me to understand just how fortunate we are and how big this problem is and how systemic it is. And then figuring out how to take that to our company, which we have in our senior leadership team, we have 0 people of color.
Yeah.
And that is not, we I don't think anybody that works at Propeller would say that we have a racism problem, but like, I can't look at that and say that we don't have a racism problem. Like that was,
Yeah.
I think, the one of the really difficult realizations about what systemic racism is. And we've got our work cut out for us. We're going to do it, but that was those have been some tough conversations, really good conversations.
Chris, the fact that you were
hard.
The fact, Chris, that you were able to identify that and call that out, I also had done it myself on a social post that took me 3 days to actually push the button on Facebook and LinkedIn. I got a good response, but with that, it was admitting the advantages of being a white male, not being sort of naive and head in my sand to what a deep problem it was, and really, like you mentioned, stemming from George Floyd, recognizing that there's never been a greater opportunity to actually make change. Our kids are a similar age, and we want to look back at this time and certainly show and highlight what it is that we've done. But the first thing, my point was, it starts with sort of admitting where you are, and it feels good when you put that out there, whether it's your team or your kids or on whatever you need to do to actually lay it out that we have not been perfect. We've been potentially far from perfect, and we need to make change. Like, in talking to my friends in the Black community on that subject, that has been the number one thing that they appreciate as a step. Like, this is base camp. This is all new for everyone. But the first thing is when you can just put your step forward and make and be socially aware, that's good progress. But I have to assume, Chris, with all these very hard moments that you and many, many other people have faced, there's got to be some good things that come out of it. How you operate, how you think, how tight your team has become, potentially the relationship with your customers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I I guess on the other side of it, some really great conversations have come out of those really hard conversations. And you never really know what you have until the world starts to fall apart and people around you just start stepping up. So as COVID happened and our I mean, our team didn't have a choice. We had to rally. And it was amazing to see everybody come together and recognize what had to be done. And it was really hard because everybody had difficult personal circumstances to deal with, but everybody stepped up. And it's been great, I think, to figure out how to communicate remotely. A lot of really good things have come out of that. We've got weekly town hall meetings that have, I think, been really great for me, and hard, right, to think about how we communicate, as we effectively move from having, we had 8 offices and now we have 180, right? And so how does that work? We've really had to, I think, figure out some creative ways to collaborate and build teamwork. It was really hard to get through 134 PPP applications in 2 weeks, but our team is totally badass and really stepped up, with individual leadership in certain areas and figuring out how to communicate internally and externally. And our clients just needed more. I mean, they needed us, in ways that they hadn't needed us before, and all at the same time. And I think it really forced us to examine the way that we communicate with clients. And it's I don't know. On some level, I feel like thank you, COVID, because it's really accelerated, I think, a ton of progress. And now it's.
Yeah, Chris, I was going to say, I think it's interesting you say that, and sometimes it's tough who you say that to. I know I've been always like cautious to say, hey, quarantine was actually really good for my family. And on top of that, on a lighter note, I learned how to use a power washer and how to edge my garden. And my kids got better at street hockey. Yeah. And listen, that's obviously a position of me having a yard, and a lot of people don't have that. But my point really is, there are some silver linings. Depend on who you talk to. I think the efficiencies of how companies think and operate and how much smarter they get, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to look at the Harvard Business Review or case studies years, probably hopefully less than that. One thing now I want to call out for everyone is, so on June 30th, C2 Ventures, which obviously has been the driver behind Lessons of Lockdown, is going to have Chris and his CFO, Anthony, on a webinar, even though I hate that word, Chris, but we're going to have a conversation, a fun conversation on all things, very important and timely conversations and events that Chris just spoke to. But in addition to that, the core of what Propeller's products and services offer the founder community and financial awareness and budgeting and runway and things like that. So Chris, in advance of the June 30th, conversation together, any interesting insights or sound bites you want to share as relates to the founder community specifically, and what you've seen and observed as they've navigated this, and also as they kind of move forward? Meaning, if you're a founder and you get a chance to hear from Chris today, the CEO of Propeller, what is one or two things that they may look forward to learning or hearing about on June 30th?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we're excited to talk about is CFOs are sort of inside the black box for every company. We know all the secrets. We're inside the room in a lot of cases where the tough decisions are being made, and we like it that way. I think we have sort of engine room DNA. We like to be heads down, looking at the numbers and solving problems. And I think there are a lot of really interesting insights from inside the engine room. So part of what we're going to try to do is look at the data and share some learnings that we've seen across our client base over the last decade, in ways that I think will be interesting. I think the other piece of this is that, COVID and financial crisis behind that, in particular, forced a lot of companies to re-examine their relationship with venture. Right. Yeah. And this is something that I think you guys see pretty clearly. Yeah. It's a really good time for us to have a conversation about how we build companies, how we capitalize companies. And, I think we've seen a lot of cases over the years where good companies have been overcapitalized in ways that wind up creating more risk for founders in particular. And, the VCs can afford to take that risk, some of them, right? But there are some hard conversations that I think, probably need to be had about how we can build companies in a healthier way. So would love to chat about that some more.
Well, good. So Chris, this was a great conversation. Another lessons from lockdown. There's so much to unpack here. We're going to save our going into the trenches, which happens to be our tagline. It's a little promo for C2V. On June 30th, we're going to spend more time together at length. We're going to record it. We're going to be sharing a lot of the headlines of what we're going to cover. But for now, Chris, this is a great initial introduction to what we're going to cover with Propeller and your leadership and your guys' experiences. And we hope to get a good turnout on the 30th. So I thank you for that. And it looks like your kids allowed us to have this conversation. So go buy them some ice cream today. It's good to see you as always, my friend. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. June 30th, Lessons from Lockdown, full blown out conversation where we're going to have participation from a lot of different customers on all sides, and really looking forward to it. So until then, Chris, be well, and we'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Looking forward. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.